Good evening to our special guest speakers, university academics and fellow students. My name is Connie Aronis and I'm the Professional Development Officer of SUPA. I'm very proud to be hosting this Careers Night organised by SUPA. I would like to thank the 7 speakers that will be presenting this evening for dedicating their time to come and educate us about the myriad of options that exist in the field of pharmacy. Please note that the Careers Night is being video recorded and you may become available for viewing at a later date. Our first speaker for this evening will be Quinn On. Quinn is a community pharmacist who graduated from Sydney University in '91. He purchased his first pharmacy with his wife Helen in Cabramatta in '94. In 2002, Quinn decided to take on a new challenge in a different demographic and purchased Menai Sol Patterson Pharmacy. He then took on a partnership in 2006 when a pharmacy in the neighbouring suburb went up for sale. Another opportunity arose in Menai in 2011 and Quinn opened a compounding pharmacy. Currently, Quinn works as a business manager to his pharmacies, where he employs over 70 staff. He is an advocate of professional services, where he endeavours to implement as many services as he can in all his pharmacies in order to combat the discounters. With the right attitude and passion, Quinn believes that community pharmacy has a great future, provided that it continues to strive for excellence in professional services and be kept out of supermarkets. Please join me in welcoming Quinn.
Thanks, Connie. Thank you for inviting me tonight. It's a privilege to be able to speak in front of you. Okay. I've been asked to speak about my experiences in community pharmacy. Sorry I don't have any PowerPoint. I was born after 1980, so I'm not very good at computers. As an early teenager, why did I decide to enter pharmacy as a profession? As an early teenager, I often visited my local pharmacy for all sorts of medications, as I suffered from allergies and several skin conditions. I suffered from eczema, psoriasis, which was causing constant pruritus. So I was always buying moisturisers and corticosteroid creams from my local pharmacy. So during my teenage years, I also suffered from acne vulgaris, acne rosacea, which meant buying more creams and antibiotics regularly. My mother was working overtime just to help me buy my medications. For my friends, the local corner store was their favourite hangout. For me, it was the local pharmacy. Allergy was my other condition that needed control. So in summer, I looked like a lamington due to my scattered dandruff from my dark hair. I also suffered from perennial rhinitis, and spring was my greatest fear, as my nose was blocked and running, and at the same time I was constantly buying antihistamines and nasal sprays. And I was addicted to nasal sprays for 20 years. Anyway, while most of my neighbouring friends were in the backyard jumping on trampolines, swimming, riding their bikes through the streets, full of energy, during a nice spring day, I would be in my room feeling drowsy due to sedating antihistamines, too scared to step out into the pollen-infested air. Okay, my biggest dread was whenever I had to cut the lawn, because I was allergic to grass, but I never knew that as a child. I would be pushing the lawnmower around, and there would be a flow of mucus running out of my face. So my teenage years was somewhat debilitating. Okay. Because I was indoors, often during my teenage years, I spent most of my time playing music and singing. Naturally, I studied music for HSC. So after completing Year 12, I decided I would study music at Sydney University here. But my mother, being the wise lady she is, said to me, I should really study pharmacy so I can start buying medicines at cost price. Because music would not make me money to sustain my medical conditions. So being an obedient child, I quickly changed my university entry application during the second round, and of course put pharmacy as my first choice, and so my pharmacy journey begins. Okay, my pharmacy experience. Just quickly overview, as Connie has said. I started working in 1989 as a first-year pharmacy student at Wetherill Park because I lived in Bonnyrigg. Did my intern year in Penrith and bought my first, second, third, fourth pharmacy course during those up to today. So what does a community pharmacist mean to me? Pharmacist means being the gatekeepers of medicines, which is a privilege, and I want to make sure I'm giving the best advice possible to my customers every time I hand out a medicine. Being a pharmacist means working with regular customers and knowing their names, knowing them by their first names through communication, such as and not having to answer questions over and over again whether they've already been to your pharmacy multiple times. Being a pharmacist means having good knowledge of prescription medications, and of course your over-the-counter ones especially, in order to make good recommendations to customers quickly due to time constraints, something that supermarkets and discount pharmacy models cannot match. Being a pharmacist means being able to refer to allied health workers, such as podiatrists, optometrists, dentists, to GPs, exercise physiotherapists, and the list goes on. This is actually a very important role, as pharmacists are known to be the first place of visit for many customers, consumers, as we are easily accessible, we're knowledgeable, and we give free advice. Okay, being a pharmacist means understanding that community pharmacy is largely a business with a dispensary that focuses not only on delivery of medicines and professional services, but other retail departments such as cosmetics, baby care, foot care, bum and tum, complementary medicines, to name a few. Being a pharmacist means to be able to improve your services. Recently, we should all be embracing on Meds Check, diabetes Meds Check, clinical interventions, and also using guild care programs. So what does a community pharmacy mean to me? As a manager and owner of pharmacies, I see community pharmacies as having two main streams. There's the professional stream and there's the retail stream. Both streams need to work separately and synergistically. As a result, I always employ two managers, one to run the front of shop and one to run the dispensary. So how did I come to buy my first pharmacy? As a young pharmacist, I was determined to work as hard as I could to get an extensive experience and to save enough deposit to buy my own pharmacy. Lucky enough, my wife Helen and I had the same goal. She's also a pharmacist. Together we worked 6 days back then, in our early years, sometimes 7 days a week until the opportunity arose and we had enough funds to put a deposit on our first pharmacy in Cabramatta back in 1994. So my first experience as an owner in Cabramatta. Cabramatta, as many of you would know, is a unique place and it's always competitive with 11 pharmacies within walking distance. To gain and attract customers and to find a niche in the market and to be able to connect with all my customers who comes from all parts of Southeast Asia means having the ability to understand the various cultures and also to understand the different dialects and languages. So luckily for me, again, my mother can speak several languages. She speaks Cambodian, Laos, Thai, Vietnamese and 4 Chinese dialects. So she became my first pharmacy assistant for 3 months. She only gave me 3 months until I could find someone that was multilingual and hire them. And so I did after 3 months. So after overcoming the language barrier, my first step was to find a niche in my product range to cater for this very specific demographic. So I introduced different types of products that was not exposed to me when I was working in other pharmacies such as in Penrith and Fairfield. So I would bring in lanolin cream, placenta capsules, colostrum capsules, and a lot of whitening creams. As you're aware, Asian women love looking white. Yeah. And I had to learn, I had to brush up on my knowledge on hepatitis A, B and C, because that was very prevalent amongst the Southeast Asian community. Doing business in Cabramatta back in the 90s was not easy, as it was at its height of problems with heroin trafficking and addiction amongst refugee youth and of course the 5T gang. I'm sure you know about them. Like many retailers back then in Cabramatta, we opened extended hours and could not afford to employ managers, so we did all the hours ourselves. Cabramatta had a lot of negative publicity in the media, and this negativity climaxed when the assassination of a political leader that happened on the 5th of September 1994, second time in Australian history. This further dampened business activity for 6 months in Cabramatta. There were times I wanted to give up. but I couldn't because we were locked into a lease we could not afford to get out of. Many businesses suffered in Cabramatta during that time. In response to this, many business leaders in the area, including myself, formed an association called the Cabramatta Business Association, in short CBA, same as Commonwealth Bank, except we were poor, where I took the role of secretary. So our goal was to improve the businesses and to regain consumer confidence of our CBD. So together with the local police, council members, local government and Fairfield Chamber of Commerce, the suburb finally cleaned up. The rest is history. Cabramatta now is a vibrant town with many tourists visiting there daily. Although it was tough at the beginning, I was determined to make my first business a success. So my message to you is don't give up too easily. Provide good customer service, participate in local area marketing and support, get to know your customers and find a niche in your area. Many of my pharmacists today have come up to me and say that it is so much harder now to own a pharmacy compared to 10 or 20 years ago. My answer to this is yes and no. That things have always been competitive and that getting into a business is a risk and that you need to take it head on. To be able to afford a business, one needs to make a lot of sacrifices, especially for the first 2 years into a brand new business. A young pharmacist today needs to work as a manager and get experience in as many aspects of pharmacy as possible to have an understanding of how the business is operated. I've assisted a few of my pharmacist managers in purchasing their first pharmacy in the last 10 years, and they are all doing really well. It's about setting up systems and being able to delegate. It's about being prepared, have due diligence, and a backup plan, and also a good accountant. So that was 8 years in Cabramatta. After 8 years in a suburb dominated by Southeast Asian customers, the Shire was a total new experience for me. This was definitely a new challenge. There was white people everywhere. I had to learn to speak English again. It took about 2 years before I worked out how to best develop the business. But there was one thing that remained the same: good customer service. So how did I get into the Shire? My sister at the time lived in the Shire and was married with 3 kids. She was married to a Guaylo. She joked to me that the service was rather slow, not like in Cabramatta, and that I should buy the business in Manor and speed things up. So I did. My initial experience in the beginning, I felt my clinical skills seemed lacking because it was very different, as we were dispensing a lot more different drugs. There was a lot of Ritalin and amphetamines in Manor. I didn't dispense those in Cabramatta. In terms of OTC, we sold more complementary medicines in Manor, and we don't sell any placenta creams or capsules. I'm not sure if you know what placenta creams and capsules do. I don't really either, but we sell them. Instead of whitening creams, which Asian women love, I was ordering hundreds of tanning products. So I went from seeing weary customers in Cabramatta with low levels of vitamin D, because they're never in the sun, to analysing skin lesions and referring customers to see dermatologists in Manor. So for 8 years in Cabramatta, I didn't have to learn about gluten-free products either, but celiac disease seems to be prominent in the Shire. I've come to realise that working with different demographics requires understanding of the culture and the conditions that are common to that group. Although the two pharmacy businesses are very different, there's still one common aspect about them. I still had to deliver good customer service, and I always employ 2 managers, a dispensary manager and a front of store. This is to provide a professional stream and a strong retail offer. So in a dispensary, the pharmacists have to change today from just dispensing a product to delivering a service. In a front of store, I needed to stock products that were relevant to the demographic. So that was my second experience with the second pharmacy. In 2006, a neighbouring suburb pharmacy was up for sale. It was owned by a friend. She gave me a call and I was interested because 2 of my managing pharmacists were ready to go into partnership with me. This was an opportunity for me to work with business partners, which I never had experience apart from my wife, who was my partner and my wife, but never just a business partner, so it was different. So this pharmacy is different because it's a true community pharmacy. It's in Millwall, as it services mainly the locals. And it's located in a small local shopping centre, which is very different to my first two pharmacies. Everybody seems to know each other's names there. And we have barbecues on a yearly basis. We support local activities, such as the football clubs and the schools. This pharmacy gave me experience in working with a very different business, partners and how we had to collaborate and work cohesively. Here I learned that having a business partner is like marriage, and that we had to trust each other. The partnership went well for 5 years until one partner exited in 2011 due to unforeseen circumstances. However, I'm still in good partnership with one existing business partner. The lesson I learned from this business is to have a good partnership agreement in place, especially if you're going to go partners with Frank. I was happy with 3 pharmacies. However, in 2011, another opportunity came up, and a shopping centre nearby was going to put up a pharmacy. So they asked me, so I took up the opportunity. But then I thought to myself, I have 3 pharmacies, they're all different. How can I make this 4th pharmacy any different? Okay, so I asked myself, what other services can I provide? So with so many discounters around, I need to make this destination. Destination means people need to come to you for a particular product. So my architect designed a pharmacy that had the right shape and flow in order to make room for extra services that did not exist in my other 3 pharmacies. He created a back entrance for the methadone and syringe program, where clients would come through the back to obtain their daily dose in privacy. We also put in a PCCA compounding lab, and 2 of my pharmacists are trained up to do compounding, and they're doing a great job at the moment. And it is a niche in the market, and many customers are very glad to be able to have something close by that can produce customised medications, such as omeprazole liquid for children, progesterone pessaries. The pharmacy also had enough room to put in homoped shoes, a section where we keep a collection of shoes, especially for people with problematic feet, and a home health care range which included walkers and wheelchairs, which my other pharmacies would not be able to carry due to the space constraints. We also put in a separate counselling area that's provision for more professional services, as it is still a very new pharmacy. In conclusion, my experience as a pharmacist has been enjoyable and rewarding, as I love talking to customers and being able to help them makes me feel accomplished. Although I don't work on the floor much these days, I still believe being a pharmacist means delivering service and not just a product. Community pharmacy is constantly evolving, just like any other industry, and we need to keep up to pace with it in order to be viable and be relevant. Many pharmacists strive to have their own pharmacies, and we are very lucky that we have 2 strong organisations behind us, the Pharmacy Guild and the Pharmacy Society of Australia. I encourage you to find a part-time or casual job in a pharmacy to develop the basic skills in community pharmacy, if that's where you're heading, as this will propel you to better prospects when you finish your studies. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Quinn. Next we have Jonathan Penn, who is a hospital pharmacist from the Sydney Eye Hospital. He also serves roles in the Society of Hospital Pharmacists of Australia and an International Pharmaceutical Federation. Please join me in welcoming him.
Hey guys, thanks for staying back late. I was born after 1980, so I have a beautiful PowerPoint. Just to show off. Fantastic. So as you see there, I've got a bit of experience with SHPA and the FIP, which is International Pharmaceutical Federation. I pretty much only know about hospital pharmacy. Like, I did work at community pharmacy when I was a student, loved it, and then the whole idea of hospital pharmacy was a grey area to me. I didn't really know much about it. But all my friends were applying, so I figured, why not? I'll apply too. Don't want to be left out. And I luckily got a position over at Wilfred South Hospital, just nearby here, where I did my internship, and then I've been working at Sydney Eye Hospital and Sydney Hospital ever since. And the reason for that is because I really fell in love with it. And I think I was very lucky because I didn't really know what I was getting myself involved in, but then I found that that was a place I really enjoyed. So hopefully tonight you'll have a better idea than I did. And you'll be able to make a more informed choice on what you want to be doing as well. There is another person talking about hospital pharmacy later this evening, and she's going to be talking about the very specifics, the day-to-day activities. Because I've been out a bit longer than she has, I'll give you perhaps a bigger picture of where it will lead you and some of the other associations that can help you out in your career path. So just to give you an idea, I think there was a bit of a census was done, about 15% of hospital pharmacists, 50% of pharmacists work in hospitals. So that's actually quite a lot of pharmacists are in hospitals. You kind of don't think of that. You think, well, pharmacists just in the community setting, but there's 50% of them hiding in the hospitals, usually in the basement, opposite the morgue. And this will tell you what we actually do down there. Most of them are in public hospitals, but some are in private. And it's a bit of a difference. I would say a private hospital is really more like a community pharmacy that's in a hospital. And they often use that PBS system and claim all their scripts. While public hospital, we're under a different budget scheme with the state government opposed to federal, so we don't use PBS generally. And so the way we do things really isn't the same in a community world. We don't really know what PBS is anymore. So on average, about 40% of the time spent on clinical activities, got 40% on distribution, and 15-20% on management. So there's quite a lot of different tasks involved. There's lots of different roles in a pharmacy. And the reason for this is, in Sydney Hospital, it's relatively small. We have about 7 pharmacists. That's fine. Everyone does a bit of everything. When I was at RPA Hospital, it's about 70 pharmacists in the department. So you can imagine if you're working with 70 or 69 other pharmacists. Everyone's doing very unique roles, very specialised roles. People are just doing purely clinical, some are doing purely distributive, and some are just management. So there's a lot of different skills that are developed in that kind of setting. And it means you also develop the skills of how to work in an organisation in a hospital, opposed to a community pharmacy, which is really about a team and can change things quite easily. In a hospital, it's all about working with the policies, working with the procedures set in place, and trying to find ways to still get what you want, regardless of what's stopping you. So things that are part of that clinical activity, typical clinical pharmacist, which is what I am, we go to the wards, we participate in the ward rounds with the doctors, we do a medication history with all our patients, assess their medicines, get the doctors to order some bloods for them, particularly the drug levels. And then we also provide medication information both to the patients and to the nurses and doctors and all the other healthcare professionals there. So a lot of my time is actually spent giving lectures or in-services to the wards or to the doctors in the hospital about medications. This kind of shows that we have a few different types. We've got medication information pharmacists. All they do is spend their days answering weird and wonderful questions and things that nobody ever thought you'd ask. And that's their role and that's their job, and it's great because as a clinical pharmacist it means I can pass off really hard questions to them, which makes my life easier. Some other hospitals just have pharmacists who specialise in just discharge counselling. Because you have so many patients leaving the hospital every day, I can't see all my patients, I can't tell all of them about the discharge medications, because when they're leaving is the exact same time as when the ward rounds up. So I'm on the ward round, I can't talk to them at the same time. So some hospitals just have pharmacists who just discharge counsels patients and tells them what they're on and what medications have changed and what to expect. Hospitals is also where a lot of clinical trials happen, so often there's a pharmacist responsible for clinical trials, looks after all those medicines that again no one's heard of and have weird names, numbers, R985, who knows what that is. So clinical trials is quite an interesting area because you're really dealing with the unknown, and so learning how to monitor things, how to be able to track where the drugs are going, who they're going to. Paperwork is very important, but it's a good skill to have, an eye for detail. 2 new roles that have emerged in hospital pharmacy is, as pharmacists are being recognised as medication experts, the pharmacy department is really in charge of medication safety in the hospitals. At the moment, hospitals in New South Wales are all going under accreditation, which is a huge, horrible process, but pharmacy is responsible for medication safety, which is a whole standard in itself. And that requires that we do a lot of drug use evaluations, a lot of antimicrobial stewardship. So we monitor the use of medicines in a hospital and we see how appropriate they are, and then we feed that back to the doctors. We say, look, out of all your patients, only 70% are getting medicines that they should be getting, the other 30 aren't getting it, or 20% are getting medicines that they shouldn't be getting. And we do this regular feedback to them, and that we find that's a really effective way of increasing the appropriateness of prescribing. But it's quite a different type of skill set than just your day-to-day dispensing. Oops, missed a bit there. Another thing I do, because it's an eye hospital, we make up a lot of eye drops, so there's aseptic techniques come into play. Also a lot of hospitals that offer chemotherapy, they're usually made up by the pharmacy department as well. So you can see me dressed up there, that's all good fun. So that's kind of another area that pharmacy moves into. There's also now pharmacy educators, so every local health district, which is made up of about 5 to 8, maybe 10 hospitals, there's usually one pharmacist responsible to go to each of those hospitals and make sure they train all the pharmacists there. So it's really moving to quite a large, big organisation where each hospital is trying to help each other out, trying to educate, standardise, make sure everyone's doing the same thing. But again, it just shows it's a much bigger environment than you're probably used to in a community setting. So things that help you get into hospital pharmacy if you are interested is to look into the SHPA, the Society of Hospital Pharmacists of Australia. And they represent really most of the hospital pharmacists out there. But I also want to bring up the International Pharmaceutical Federation, just to give you a bit more of an international perspective of what's happening. Hospital pharmacists have a real unique skill that's transferable internationally. And we're very lucky in Australia because hospital pharmacy in pretty much every country but Australia, you can't get into without a specialised degree. Usually you have to do a pharmacy degree and then you do another degree again in pharmacy, or you specialise in a residency program, and it takes a long time to move into hospital pharmacy. We're one of the only countries where you can just move straight in there with a bachelor's. And so people, whenever they hear hospital pharmacy internationally, it's like, wow, you must have done so much work, and really we're just Australia, we haven't done anything. So the SHPA, they offer a lot of training. So as you can see, there's a lot of different roles in hospital pharmacy that you probably don't get built up for as much at uni. So to help you get those skills, the SHPA offers seminars in critical care, so intensive care unit, anaesthetics, emergency department, all the types of medicines used there. Haematology, oncology. I didn't even know what haematology was when I went on my haematology ward. I didn't have a clue what any of those patients had until I actually started figuring this out and going to these seminars. So learning those skills are things you don't often see in a community standpoint or even taught at a university level. So these are really good seminars to go to and things to just help build up your CV and show your enthusiasm towards it. Again, there's infectious care, infectious disease, clinical cardiology and laboratory tests. SHPA has a lot of networking going on, lots of special interest groups, and this has helped me engage with a lot of different types of specialties and help develop my skills. So we have special interest groups in cancer, cardiology, critical care, education, pretty much everything under the sun. And what that really shows you is all the different ways that you can specialise in hospital pharmacy. Each one of those shows a different career path you can be moving towards in hospital pharmacy that people have chosen, are really interested in, and they decide I'm just going to be a specialist in that area. So that's what that's really showing. SHPA also offers some books that you don't get taught as much about, so things like Don't Rush to Crush, What Medicines Can You Crush, What Can't You Crush, very common hospital pharmacy interview questions, so I recommend you actually know that if you go for one. And also an injectable handbook. We often get, as the medication expert, everyone goes, oh, what can I dilute this drug in and how fast can I give it? And I look at them and I go, I think I missed that course at uni. And so that's a book that's really good for that. And because you get put in that situation, you learn very quickly, and it's quite good. So I now kind of edit a lot of those entries into that book. So now I can actually say I know injectable drugs. But before I moved to the hospital, it was an area that was quite foreign to me. The other cool thing about SHPA is I offer grants. Grants are really good. You get free money, and like most things, most people don't apply for them. I don't really know why. And so just keep that in mind. If you move out, think of what opportunities it can generate for you and just apply for them. Don't be afraid. There's nothing wrong if you don't get it, but to be honest, most people don't apply for these things. FIP, on the other hand, this is actually the international pharmacy body that makes recommendations to WHO. So they're quite big in that field of public health and particularly in counterfeit medicines as well. And they're part of the World Health Professional Alliance, which is a collaboration between doctors, dentists, nurses and pharmacists. So it just shows you that multidisciplinary collaboration is really occurring at an international level. What I wanted to also show you is perhaps some of the opportunities that hospital can provide. I'll quickly pass this slide. But hospital pharmacists develop and understand the healthcare system, which is completely different and very difficult to understand. In fact, most people in Australia, I would say, do not understand the healthcare system. They don't understand the processes in the hospital. When you have like thousands of workers in one building, what does each person do and how does that benefit you as a patient is really difficult. And pharmacists, because we do the admission, medication admission, and then we do all your discharge medicines at the end, we actually have a very good understanding of the whole picture. And that's extremely rare for anyone in the hospital sector. So for that reason, you get really liked by policy people and by government. You can assess medicines based on the benefits and costs. And you learn to work in teams, particularly those who don't know the same degree as you, have very different understandings. So when you talk to physiotherapists, social workers, occupational therapists, you learn how everyone's unique attributes mold together. And you also learn to deal with the HAPS medicines you don't see as often in the community, tuberculosis and HIV, because they're usually done in a hospital setting. And those two things, because they're a public health issue, if you ever go to a developing country and you want to work over there, they'll love you because you know all about TB and about HIV. That's usually where people want healthcare workers overseas. So hospital pharmacists also make ideal candidates for overseas work and health policy. Another thing to keep in mind is on the SHPA, there's a bit on the website saying, are you interested in volunteering? I don't know if you can see that, it's pretty tiny. And there's a few groups that actually specialise in sending pharmacists overseas to help develop your skills, but they really only want hospital pharmacists, because at the end of the day, they're the types that are good for overseas volunteer work. They understand the system, they understand policies, they understand how to get around governments. And so, for instance, someone who did this last year, a friend I know, Megan, she went over to Tonga, which is this little island over here, and she helped develop clinical pharmacy services over there through that aid organisation. There's also the Hoffmeyer Foundation, which is part of the University of Sydney. They specialise in a partnership between Australia and Vietnam. Again, they are only interested in hospital pharmacists, sorry to say. They send hospital pharmacists from Australia to Vietnam and Vietnam to Australia. This is part of the Royal North Shore Hospital. Again, most people don't really take up these offers because people don't like going overseas, but if you're keen on it, I'll talk to them and they'll pretty much love to have hospital pharmacists go to Vietnam and help them because they've recently initiated clinical pharmacy services there in the last 2 years. There's also a group, well, SAVE group, sponsored by Symbion and Sanofi. They again offer grants only to hospital pharmacists and they send people around the place like Cambodia, Solomon Islands, Sri Lanka, Vanuatu. And so someone else I know who's gone over there is Danelli, and this kind of shows why clinical pharmacists want it so much. She went to Sri Lanka with their grant. She introduced clinical pharmacy services, the very first one in Sri Lanka, and that was just last year. So she taught them about what clinical pharmacy services are. But then she also was able to do a volunteer internship at WHO because they really like that whole public health initiative. In fact, you knew about government policy, and they knew about high-risk areas like TB and HIV. And so she actually worked on the National Essential Medicines list over there, which is pretty much a government formulary which is used in all hospitals and analysed how to select antimicrobials. So hospital pharmacists have also got key positions in all our quality use of medicine kind of professions. So the NPS, that all of you know, the CEO there and the executives, they're all hospital pharmacists. Because at the end of the day, those skills are very easily transferable to things like quality use of medicines. And now that we have DUE pharmacists, or drug use evaluation pharmacists, that's basically the same thing as a quality use of medicines pharmacist. The Australian Commission of Safety, Quality and Healthcare, they also have hospital pharmacists working over there. Clinical Excellence Commission, then people work there, hospital pharmacists, and they look at medication safety. They just implement programs to ensure that medications are given safely and dispensed safely, and all the errors and why errors happen. And also New South Wales TAG is another group that looks at quality use of medicines. And again, all the people in leadership in these areas are hospital pharmacists. So I'm just trying to give you an idea. The hospital pharmacy, although I love it, I think it's fantastic, there are lots of career paths that also opens up to you. And just to be aware that when you're choosing a job, you're young, that may not be the job you are in forever, but think of the skills you're also gaining from that job and where that can lead in the future as well. I'll leave it with that.
Thank you, Jonathan. Next we have Dr. Claire O'Reilly, who is a lecturer here in the faculty. Her research has investigated pharmacists' attitudes towards mental illness and the evaluation of new training and education programs for pharmacists in the area of mental health. Claire is also a practicing community pharmacist at Nick Logan Pharmacist Advice and an accredited mental health first aid instructor. Claire is currently the National Vice President of the Pharmaceutical Society of Australia And her past achievements include being awarded the PSA New South Wales Pharmacy Graduate of the Year in 2004, the PSA Australian Young Pharmacist of the Year in 2006, and in 2009 she was awarded the International Pharmaceutical Federation Young Pharmacist Award for Professional Innovation. Please join me in welcoming her.
An award that I might add Jonathan also won, the International Pharmacist Award.
Just the flag.
Thank you, Connie, and thanks for having me. And yes, I have slides. I'm academic. All I do is make slides. Okay, so Connie's asked me to talk about a couple of things. A bit about life as an academic and so I want to tell you a bit about what I do, but also how I got here, what I enjoy about it. But also because my role with PSA, I said I'd mention a little bit about what PSA is, what it can do for you, and also its early career pharmacist working group to help support young pharmacists. So just a bit about my background. So currently, as you know, I'm a lecturer here in the pharmacy faculty, so I do teaching and research in that role. I've been a community pharmacist at Nick Logan Pharmacist Advice. I did my intern year there, and I've been there ever since. I've been there for the past 10 years. And that's a great pharmacy, and I love it. And the reason I went on to do the different things I do is not because I didn't enjoy that, but because I wanted another challenge. So I still continue to work there on the weekend. I find that really enjoyable because it's what we call a forward pharmacy. So we have dispensing, we call them dispensing pods, but basically counselling areas out the front of the pharmacy. So every time someone comes in with a prescription, we offer them a seat to sit down, and we do the prescription and do all the processing there. I don't go into the dispensary. We have technicians that prepare everything out the back, but we do all of this at the time. And I think it's just a really rewarding way to work because you're always on the floor of the pharmacy and you're not involved in technical skills, which I think you have other staff to be able to do. So I've always enjoyed that. But then I got interested in mental health care, so I went on to do some research in PhD in that area. I also became an accredited mental health first aid instructor, which I still teach, and also my role with the Pharmaceutical Society, which I'll talk about. So as some of you have heard today, there's a number of different areas that you can go in your career. And even though I'm going to talk about academia, I want you to think about also the fact that postgraduate research can lead you to a lot of other areas that it may not necessarily mean you're going to end up as an academic. I never thought I'd end up as an academic. So you never know where that's going to take you. So even though I'm focusing on academia, it's a lot of different opportunities that it can open up for you. So how do you get to this place? Well, originally I was like you, did my bachelor's degree here at the University of Sydney in 2003. Decided to do honours at the time because I thought, oh, well, that might be a bit of a different, something a bit different, maybe learn some new skills. Had no intention of continuing to do research, so I left that year, went out and did my intern year and thoroughly enjoyed it and had no intention of coming back to uni at all. But a few years later, I worked part-time just on a research project working at a local mental health team, which was through the University of Sydney. And that was a really enjoyable project to work a day a week, participating in this mental health team, reviewing medications. And I thought, oh, this is really interesting. That ended and I kind of wanted my next challenge. So I thought we need to do a whole lot more in the area of mental health and looking at the pharmacist's role in mental health care. So I then enrolled in a PhD. That completed in 2011. And then I was lucky at the time that a position opened up here in a teaching learning role, an associate lecturer position, which I just jumped at the opportunity. I thought that'd be a great experience. I'd done some casual teaching throughout my PhD and thought I really enjoyed teaching, thought that would be something that I might be interested in. And then one thing led to another, and then I got appointed in a permanent role here in a teaching and research role, which I'm doing currently, which I do thoroughly enjoy. So what do I do as an academic? A lot of my friends in community or hospital pharmacy just think I sit there in my office twiddling my thumbs, don't really do anything as an academic. But it is particularly busy, but enjoyable. So we basically have a workload breakdown of what we call a 40-40-20 kind of policy as an academic. So that means basically 40% of our time is around research, 40% to teaching, and 20% to service, as we call it. So teaching can be from a whole range of things. And in my couple of years that I've been here in a full-time capacity, I've taught all sorts of things. Things that I've had to refresh from my undergraduate days to be able to teach. But then obviously areas that your experience as a practicing community pharmacist also really helpful and really relevant to share on those skills to students. So developing educational material, conducting tutorials, labs, setting marking assessments, all sorts of things like that. The good thing about it in terms of the research is that you get to pursue things that you're interested in. So we have, the way that our research works in the faculty is we have 5 research themes, which is basically cancer, cardiovascular and endocrine, respiratory, mental health, and health services and patient safety. So mental health is, I'm a member of our mental health research team, and we have people in our team looking at from the cell level and GABA receptors through to the clinical practice and role of pharmacists in mental health. So we have quite a range of different researchers that work together looking at projects of how one end through to the other spectrum. And so it is interesting because you do get to follow things that you're interested in. So you research new ideas all the time, that you read about something, you think, oh, that's really important, or we've noticed a gap in literature, we want to do a project in that. Part of that research role, we also supervise students, so whether it be honours students this year, postgraduate Masters of Philosophy, postgraduate PhD students in a variety of different research topics, so that's also part of that role in research. Service is also something that we do within this. So, for example, I'm the Gertie coordinator. That's one of my service roles to the faculty. You might be asked to sit on different committees, help develop, new educational policies, programs, all sorts of different things like that. So it's a very varied role, and certainly no day is the same. So, what kind of things do I love about it? Well, the variety. You get to travel, present at conferences, different things like that. But no day is the same and no week is the same. So it's also fairly flexible, so it allows me time to do different things, like do things with PSA. So for example, the last week I've conducted interviews for research projects, had lots of meetings with students, run tutorials, run exams. I've been to Melbourne to chair a meeting on policy initiatives that we're putting forward for PSA to government, work to shift in community pharmacy. Not much time to sleep, as much of all of that, but it's really a wide variety of things that is what I love about it. I enjoy the challenge. For me, that was why I decided to do a PhD in the first place, was that idea about research and finding out something that's unknown and wanting to investigate things and trying to make a difference. So trying to improve pharmacy services or trying to improve outcomes for our mental health patients so that they are getting better use of their medicines. And because of that, as I mentioned, you get to pursue things that you're interested in, so you get to follow your interest in certain areas. So if you're thinking about that you think this might be something you're interested in, well, an academic position really does need a PhD. So if you are thinking that postgraduate research might be something that you want to do, either honours in your 4th year is a good way to start, but if you decide or don't end up doing that during your degree, it doesn't mean that you're out of options in doing research. There's always other ways to get into it at a later stage in your career, or even straight after, so doing something like a Master of Philosophy. So to enrol in a PhD you need some prior research experience, so another research degree, so an honours or a Master's level degree to be able to enrol in a PhD. So there's those type of options. I think it's really important that if you're particularly interested in practice-based research, that experience as a pharmacist is really important. So for me, I worked full-time for 4 years before I came back to do my PhD, and I think that was really, really valuable time, particularly because of the area that I was interested in research. So I often encourage people who are thinking, no, I'm sure I want to come back into a PhD. I say, that's great, but get registered. I think do your intern year, get registered, get some experience, and then think about coming back, because I think it makes really useful combination of skills in this area. Sometimes a barrier to thinking about doing a PhD or postgraduate research can be income. So that was the thing I had to think about. So I went from being on a full-time pharmacist income, having bills to pay and rent and all sorts of things, and then thinking, oh, I'm going to launch into a full-time PhD. There are scholarships available. They are tough to get, but there are scholarships available, and they're usually tax-free. So by the time you get a tax-free scholarship, you might work a shift in community pharmacy, do some teaching, different things like that. It's actually not too bad. So often people think that that's well, no, I couldn't do that, couldn't afford to do that. There are ways to make that possible. And as I mentioned, being an academic is not the only option with postgraduate research. doing a PhD or even doing any kind of postgraduate research can open up many career paths, and I'm sure other people such as Sylvia will mention pharmaceutical industry. Research only roles, you may not be an academic as such, but you may work in a research type role in a variety of different research institutions, not-for-profit health organisations, other universities. You might end up doing consultancy work, you might work in health policy, maybe for government. It really teaches you a whole range of skills in research, in presenting, in writing reports, in academic writing, a whole lot of things that can be really valuable in a whole range of different career paths. Okay? So keep broad when you are thinking about this, and it doesn't have to be one thing. I certainly never thought this is where it would take me, and it does leave open lots of doors. Okay, so with my other hat on, I just want to give you a bit of an overview about PSA, the Pharmaceutical Society. PSA is the peak professional body representing pharmacists in whatever area of practice they work in. So out of the 25,000 pharmacists that are in Australia, we have about 16,000 roughly members. And our main kind of roles are in education, is obviously one of our core roles, but advocacy. So advocating for you in terms of future roles for pharmacists, standing up for rights of pharmacists if there's issues that we don't think are fair, setting policies, writing competency standards. When a medicine becomes down scheduled, we would write a protocol for how to supply the pharmacist in S3, all of those types of things, and always continually looking for new future roles for pharmacists. So PSA's vision is about improving the nation's health through excellence in the practice of pharmacy. And what that means is we are aiming to empower our members, so empowering pharmacists to be healthcare leaders by looking at supporting their practice, so giving them the right tools, the right education, positioning you, so making sure that we are making opportunities for you to work in a variety of areas, advocating for you, and obviously we need to be sustainable as an organisation. So we think about pharmacy as a whole career, not just about education, that's one aspect. So being your voice, trying to enable your future careers, obviously cover all your CP needs, but also networking. Okay, as Jonathan mentioned, that's a really important aspect to be involved with your professional organisation, because sometimes I think you're so used to being with all your colleagues day to day at university, you go out there into your pharmacy and you might be in a community pharmacy where you can't leave those four walls. And you might lose some of that networking, so it's really important to maintain those networks and use these organisations, conferences, meetings, etc. to network with your colleagues. So I'm not sure how many of you know, but as a student you're able to be a PSA member for free. Basically, with that you get books and any PSA event at a member discounted rate. You get an e-copy every month of the Australian Pharmacist. There's a whole stack of CPD that's available online as well as in the Australian Pharmacist, other print things face-to-face. We do access to all the things like codes of ethics, standards, guidelines, able to provide you advocacy, your voice, concerns if you have issues, contact the society. A new service that we've recently launched, particularly because of issues that we've had reported from young pharmacists, is our ethics advisory service, which is just getting off the ground at the moment. Because we've had a number of situations where young pharmacists have contacted us and said, look, my employer has been doing something that I don't, or asking me to do something that I don't feel is right, what do I do, etc., etc. So this is a service to members to try and support them and give them advice, and we've got a range of experienced pharmacists and experts in this area, including Dr. Benny Charlie, who you all know, who's been involved in the development of that service to help respond to those issues and those queries. So in terms of if you are interested in PSA, that's the details for membership to have a look at, and the New South Wales contact details are there, and I'm happy to give those if Connie would like the slides. The other thing with PSA I just wanted to touch on was the Early Career Pharmacist Working Group. So it's a group that was set up in 2009. So PSA has only been a national organisation since 2008. It used to be separate state branches and one separate national organisation then. So when it was established in 2008, we said we really need to be able to support younger pharmacists better than we have been doing today. So we set up an early career working group, which basically represents students, interns and registered pharmacists up to 10 years of experience. And it's a part of the PSA governance structure, and it has a national and a state voice, basically. So I have been a national chair of this for a number of years, and I've just handed over to Michelle Lynch, who is our branch president and also another young pharmacist from Victoria. And basically we have reps from every state, and we also have a representative on the group from NAPSA, so that we make sure we're connected with what's happening with NAPSA and the students. And they also have their own state active group. So for example, Lisa, Jonathan's also involved in New South Wales, organises meetings, events, etc. for early career pharmacists in New South Wales. So the aim is really to try and support pharmacists in that early stage, so in that transition from uni into your first early years out in the profession. Look at things of mentoring. And also look at how we can get early career pharmacists more involved in the organisational side of pharmacy. So this is how I originally got involved in PSA. So after being involved in SUPA here myself, I got involved in the Young Pharmacists group of PSA New South Wales when that was around. And then after a few years and I chaired that group, there was a spot on the New South Wales Council, and I thought, oh, why not? I'll give that a try. And one thing led to the other, I got elected to the national board and then to national vice president. So look, it's been a thoroughly enjoyable, it's been difficult at times, but it's been a thoroughly enjoyable thing that I've done as part of my career. I really encourage you, if you are interested in getting involved, because when we look at, I find it quite interesting when we look at the statistics of pharmacists in New South Wales. The average pharmacist in New South Wales, and our latest board statistics, is female. Well, the average across the country is female, lives in New South Wales and aged 26 to 30. It's a very different picture of the pharmacist workforce than what we saw not that long ago. However, a lot of the people that are involved in PSA are much older than me. And it'd be really great to have that succession plan and have more young people involved and having your say. So I've said most of this, we're really just trying to advocate for you, look at what programs and what support you need while you're out there working. Educational, social events, etc. But also we're trying to get your voice around policy issues and things that are actually affecting you as well. If you are interested, we did quite a large survey in 2009 or 10, can't quite remember, which we had about 1,400 or 1,500 responses about what were the needs and expectations of early career pharmacists. That's interesting if you want to have a look. If you are interested in getting involved in the New South Wales group, and I encourage you to, even if just to be aware of what they're doing, attend some of their events, I encourage you to send an email to that address. You can either send it to the directors to the New South Wales ECP one, or Dominic is a young pharmacist who works at PSA who helps coordinate that for the society. So I'll leave it there, and that's obviously the website if you want any more information. Thanks.
Thank you, Claire. Our next speaker for this evening is Dr. Sylvia Royds. She graduated from the Faculty of Pharmacy at Sydney University with a Bachelor of Pharmacy First Class Honours and a PhD. She then worked for Park Davis after completing a PhD and moved on to Pfizer following the takeover, where she was Regulatory Affairs Manager. Sylvia has 15 years experience in the pharmaceutical industry. She is currently working at Novartis as a Regulatory Affairs Consultant. Please join me in welcoming Sylvia.
Thank you, Connie. Now I'll just get my presentation up. Okay, so that actually leads quite nicely on from what our previous speaker was, in that I did do a PhD here at Sydney Uni, and the sky is the limit having done that. So PhD isn't just having a PhD, but it's also the skills that you develop in going through the process. So your analytical skills, your attention to detail, decision making, forward planning, time management, strategy development, all that are skills that you require, I guess, in life, but mainly also within the pharmaceutical industry. So what I thought I would do is actually just give you a brief overview of the drug development process, and then from that look at the roles of pharmacists within that process, and then go into some detail about those roles. I did give a similar presentation last year whilst I was at Pfizer, so some of you may remember some of this detail, and I have tweaked some of it to make it a little bit different. Okay, so this is the drug development process, and as you can see from this, the pharmaceutical industry does invest in basically getting new products to market. So having said that, it's a high risk and high cost industry. So when you look at this, you'll see out of 10,000 compounds that are developed, only one actually makes it to market. And that takes about 10 to 15 years for that process. So if a company was to take out a 20 to 25 year patent, you really only have at the most 10 years to try and get your money back from having done that. So if the drug's a flop, you've invested a lot of money. And I don't know, I did ask the question last year whether anyone remembers how much it actually costs to get a drug from drug discovery, so from compound stage, to on the market available for patients. I don't know if anyone wants to take a stab at how much. $1 million. Yeah, you remember. Who remembered? Who was that? That's $1 billion US. So that's a lot of money. And then to have it withdrawn at the end, or not make it, or have it withdrawn off the market is a huge investment. So that's a huge difference. So as you can see, out of those 10,000, 5 only make it to clinical trials, so they're used in humans. And then out of those 5, only 1 actually makes it to market. Okay, so having that in mind, careers within that area are mainly within the medical department. So pharmacists often go clinical research, regulatory affairs, medical information or drug safety. Then there's patient access, also known as market access or health outcomes, which is basically your PBS listing. And then pharmacists also go into marketing, sales, training. And there are some roles within Australia, however, a lot of those roles, or your meaty research within pharmaceutical companies, are mainly international roles. Okay, looking at the clinical research department, a pharmacist in clinical research would basically be responsible for initiating, conducting and reporting on all clinical trials, and that's from phase 1 through to phase 4, and I'll go into detail about that. And ensuring that the clinical trials are run according to appropriate standards and standard operating procedures. A career within clinical research would probably see you starting off as an associate, moving on to a senior, and then a project manager, and then a research manager or head of clinical research. Looking at the stages of clinical trials, you've got your phase 1 trials, which are basically a small number of people done in humans, obviously, and healthy volunteers, so not with the disease state. And it's mainly looking at the product safety. They then move on to phase 2 clinical trials, which is sort of several hundred people participate and look at the efficacy of the study, of the product, and they look at it also in placebo-controlled trials and often blinded. Phase 3 studies, which are the ones that we all want because it's your hardcore, clinical safety and efficacy of the study, and it's also across a wide, probably thousands, hundreds of thousands of patients. And then there's approval, and then phase 4 studies, which are post-approval, just looking at the impact of that product once it's actually made available out there to many patients. Okay, so regulatory affairs is the area that I work in. So you've done your clinical studies, which are in your animals, in your humans, and you've done your preclinical studies, which are in your animals. So a regulatory affairs person would basically put together and collate all the information from your clinical studies, your preclinical and your chemistry of the drug, and put proposals together to the Therapeutic Goods Administration that are based in Canberra to try and get new products approved or new indications for existing products or new formulations, and also maintaining the products that are on the market. So it takes a lot of regulatory work to actually maintain products that are already on the market. So a career within regulatory affairs would basically look at starting off as an associate, moving on to senior, project manager, and then reg affairs manager or head of regulatory affairs. The TGA, which is the Therapeutic Goods Administration, does evaluate that product for its efficacy, safety and quality. So like I said, you submit clinical data, non-clinical or animal data and your chemistry data. So that's what they're evaluating to make sure it's an effective and safe product for once it goes out to market. The prescription side of the business is looked at by the Office of Medicines Authorisation, and then there's a separate section of TGA that looks at OTC medicines. Okay, so once you get your product approved and registered, you then need to get it listed on the Pharmaceutical Benefits Scheme. in order for patients to have viable access to it. As we all know, there are products that are available on the private, as a private script, but mostly companies do want to try and get it PBS listed. So a career in patient access or market access looks at new product planning or development, so they look at compounds that are in the pipeline, they look at pricing negotiations, and they also work on applications for PBS listing of products. So again, within this, you start off as an associate, then moving on to health economist, senior health economist, and then manager or head of department. Just to sort of try and tie that up, you get a product registered by the Therapeutic Goods Administration, so that will be a career within regulatory affairs. You then need to also get the product PBS listed, and that's through the Pharmaceutical Benefits Division, and that's within patient access or market access within companies. Both these departments are part of the Department of Health and Ageing, so they both sit under that. The TGA evaluates for efficacy, safety and quality, whereas to get it for PBS listing, they're looking at comparative efficacy, safety and cost effectiveness. So the TGA has already done their job in evaluating the efficacy, safety and quality, and then what the PBS do is that they benchmark against what your gold standard is at the time. You can get successful product registration, which may not necessarily lead to successful PBS listing. So, and like I said, there's products that are private script available. Okay, the other area that pharmacists often go into is medical information. So medical information can be, normally a lot of their inquiries are when the product's on the market, but they also get inquiries from internal customers about upcoming products. And their external customers are your doctors, such as your specialists, or your GPs, pharmacists, allied health professionals, and of course the customers that use the product. They often work on training material for the sales force as well, and they also review promotional material to ensure that what the sales force use is in accordance with particular codes, mainly the Medicines Australia Code of Conduct. Okay, careers within medical information, so you've got medical information associate, senior and then manager. So most roles within industry would work that way. Drug safety is also another important department that pharmacists often go into, and what this does is collate and maintain AE, so mainly all your adverse events that are reported once a product's on the market. So that can be from healthcare professionals, consumers, anybody that rings for an AE. And there's a lot of AE training that is conducted by pharmaceutical companies because it is an important aspect of maintaining the product's safety once it's on the market. Again, associate, senior associate and then drug safety manager. Okay, marketing is another area that pharmacists can go into, and so what they do there is they mainly look at developing launch strategies, putting together promotional material for the sales force, creating pieces and evaluating therapeutic options, the therapeutic disease state, and then also their particular drugs. And then a career within that can also lead to regional roles, as can any career within the pharmaceutical industry if you're interested in going to working for a parent company, which is often overseas. Now, marketing and sales do work quite closely together. So a sales department, which would be like as a sales rep, is important in providing information, not only about the company's product, but about the disease state and therapeutic option. And that can be to general practitioners, specialists, pharmacists, and the other allied health. And they also are important in providing feedback to marketing to see how that sales and promotional material has been received in the marketplace. Again, careers within sales, you can start off as a sales rep and then gradually move your way up to being sales director or within a particular region. That just shows the collaboration that's done between marketing and sales and the constant feedback in order to ensure the viability of the product and ensure that what they're producing is acceptable out there for the customers. Another avenue is actually training. So the training department is responsible for putting together the material, on the disease state and the competitors and the company's own products. So they also provide training, as well as putting together the material, they would also provide training to the sales force. So that can be quite, it's almost like the teaching aspect as well, if you're interested in that. And again, careers within that, so you probably start off as an associate and then move your way up into the training department, and then some would then venture off into different areas within the pharmaceutical industry. So in summary, the pharmaceutical industry is an essential partner within the Australian healthcare sector, and a drug development process from your lab or conception stage to having the product approved, like as in TGA approved and PDS listed, is a very high risk and high cost industry. Careers that you look at are within, like when you look at the process, you've got your clinical research, getting it TGA approved, PBS listing, marketing and sales and training, and then medical information and drug safety. And then that sort of ends by summarising each of those roles within the pharmaceutical industry. I also thought I'd say that not many companies, but I do know that Novartis have sort of like applications, and they do accept applications for doing into like your pharmacy registration within the pharmaceutical industry, and we've currently got a student from last year's fourth year that's doing his registration at Novartis, and he's rotating from different departments. So you can either pick a department or you can rotate to get an idea of what it's like to work in the different departments. And they just said that if you do want more information, they're having a trade display on the 3rd of May, which is through the SUPA. Their trade display, yeah. So if there's any other questions, or if there's any questions, happy to answer them, or really take them. I'm not sure, Connie, how you want to run it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. Our next speaker is Sarah Jaworski, who is a pharmacist in the Army. She completed a Bachelor of Pharmacy at the University of Queensland in 2007. Her career has consisted of postings at the 2nd Health Support Battalion in Brisbane, the 3rd Combat Service Support Battalion in Townsville, and the Defence National Storage and Distribution Centre in Randwick as the Operations Officer in Sydney. Please join me in welcoming her.
As Connie said, my name's Captain Sarah Jaworski, and I'm a pharmacist within the ADF, but particularly in the Australian Army. What I'm going to talk to you about today, the main question I get is how do you get into the Army, or how do you get into the Defence Force when you're a pharmacist? So I'll run through that with you first. Then we'll talk about some of the different roles that you can do when you are a pharmacist within the Defence Force, and the different opportunities that present themselves that are unique to the military. So, Captain Wendy Lake was my first boss when I moved into the Army. There are a couple of ways you can become an officer within the Army, or a pharmacist within the Army. You can come in as a full-time officer or as a reservist. As a full-time officer, you can come through as either an undergraduate or a graduate. So you can either do what I did, and I joined the Army as a student through the undergraduate scheme, which is a scholarship program through the ADF. They paid for my university degree through my 3rd and 4th year of pharmacy. I was paid a wage while I was studying. My textbooks were paid for, my stationery was paid for, and travel was paid for. So it's a really nice little way to be funded to study. It takes the pressure off, especially if any of you out there are working full-time. It's an excellent opportunity. There are options of coming in as a graduate, fully qualified, and that you'll go through the same processes of enlistment that you would as an undergraduate. As a reservist, we only take reservists as full-time graduates. You have to be a graduate to become a reservist, and that's a process that's changed recently, especially within the Army. You would get posted to a reserve battalion where you'll be managed by full-time staff that help you with training and development within the military. The general requirements to be in the military, you have to be aged between 17 and 56. A little bit older if you're a reservist, you can be 60, and with a waiver you can be up to 65, but you'll be hard pressed keeping up with the young guns at 65. Physically. As an undergraduate, I was required to complete a ROSO, and that is a return of service obligation. So I was sponsored for my 3rd and 4th year of uni, which means I owed the military the 2 years that I was sponsored plus an extra 12 months. So I had 3 years of service that I owed to the Army. You must be an Australian citizen, that you will have security background checks completed on you, so I wouldn't be trying to join the military if you have a history of, armed robbery, fraud, theft, sexual assault, all those bad things. You're not going to get in, so don't even bother. They will check. There's also an aptitude requirement, so you'll do verbal, numerical, mathematical examinations just to make sure that you have what it takes to be an officer within the military. Different standards for different professions. Pharmacy is up there, so I'm sure you'll be fine if you ever decided to go through. I don't think we've got any dummies here. In terms of medical requirements, you are required to go through a medical examination. You'll complete a history questionnaire. They'll do preliminary scope on you, and that's just to determine whether you're even fit from a initial scope. They will assess your weight before you're coming in, because fitness is a very big component of what we do, and that's true for every occupation within the military. It doesn't matter whether you're an infantry soldier or a pharmacist, you'll be required to be fit, carry weapons, all those sorts of good things. Then you'll go through, if you pass your preliminary examinations, you'll go through a full medical examination. That's your turn and cough, they'll check everything. Yeah? You'll also do a physical examination, so they'll get you to hop on one leg, they'll get you to do a fitness exam, which to get in is not that hard, I must admit. I'm sure you guys did beep tests at school. You had to do a level 7 and a half and a beep test. You had to do 8 push-ups as a girl and about 30 sit-ups, but that's to get in. They drastically jump up once you're in. But you have time to get there. They don't expect you to be able to do that from day one. So the fitness requirements, there is a physical fitness assessment that you are required to do twice a year. The physical fitness assessment, which we call BFA, or Basic Fitness Assessment, comprises of push-ups, sit-ups and a run. But for you guys, as I said, it's a shuttle run, your beep test when you're coming in. The standards are there for Army and Air Force. There are no Navy pharmacists currently, except one reserve. That's in the process of changing, because if anyone keeps abreast of anything that's going on in the military, we're now requiring what we call LHDs, so they're big Navy platforms, vessels that can do amphibious landings in assaults and humanitarian aid missions, all those sorts of things. So there may be scope for Navy pharmacists in the future. As I said, you have a period of service once you enlist in the Army. So if you're coming in as a graduate or registered pharmacist already, the minimum period of service is 3 years. So you enlist and you sign up for 3 years. Sounds scary, but it goes in the blink of an eye, trust me. As an undergraduate, as I said, it was your length of sponsorship plus 1 year. And as a graduate reserve, it's however long you would like to stay in. Once you're in, you'll have to undergo military training. They understand that you are a specialist and you bring a specialist sets of skills to the organisation. However, you are a soldier first and a pharmacist second. So they expect you to know how to be a soldier/officer for a pharmacist. So you will go down to the military academy in Duntree, and you'll learn how to be an officer in the Army. You'll do 2 different modules, they're 16 days each. It's much, much shorter than the 18 months that general service officers have to do to become officers in the Army. But this will give you your basic knowledge of how to be an officer. So you'll learn how to handle a weapon, you'll learn how to go bush, which we call field routine. You'll learn basic first aid, you'll learn about comms equipment, so how to use a radio and how to talk over a radio. That's a whole different language altogether. You will learn military drill, so how to salute, how to turn left, how to march. And you'll also learn the military customs and ethics. So that, for example, tomorrow night for me, we have a service dinner. So there's all sorts of customs and traditions that go along with a service dinner. Toasts, hosting, there's particular honours that go on at a dinner. For example, we set a place for the fallen soldier and we acknowledge the fallen soldier throughout the dinner. All those sorts of things comprise your military customs and traditions. In your Module 2, your second module, your basic officer skills, you'll learn about command, leadership and management training. So that's your CLMT theory. You'll learn about service law. You'll also learn about how to manage personnel, which is a very useful skill that you can extrapolate into community pharmacy should you ever, or hospital pharmacy should you ever decide to leave the military. You'll also learn about risk management, which is very, very important in the military because we don't lose anyone on training. Following your initial entry course, you'll do your logistics officer basic course, because one of your primary roles as a pharmacist within the military is logistics. So that's getting your medications from point A to point B, maintaining cold chain, making sure that somebody who is authorised to hold that medication is actually holding that medication. So you'll go to Bernier at the Army Logistics Training School and you'll learn about logistics. So you'll learn doctrine about logistics, where to place it on the field. You'll learn about the military appreciation process and how to procure something in the field. Then your second phase is specialty corps. So as a pharmacist, you belong to the medical corps. However, as I said, a large chunk of what you do is logistics based. So you'll do training either in or both medical or ordnance corps and learn about all the specific things that go with being a pharmacist in the medical corps or a pharmacist working in a logistics role. You'll learn how to give orders, you'll learn how to site a pharmacy on the ground as part of a battalion or a health battalion or a combat service battalion. You'll also learn about all the warehousing principles and flow and how that helps with efficiency within your pharmacy organisation. So, that's generally how you get in and what's expected of you once you get in. That's step one. In terms of what we do, there's a couple of different roles. Traditionally, as a first-year pharmacist within the Army, you will post to a medical centre within a hospital or we actually just call them regimental aid posts or medical centres. So for Army pharmacists, that's either in Townsville or Darwin, and you'll do your standard sort of community pharmacy work. You'll get scripts from people seeing the doctors in the medical centres or the visiting specialists in the medical centres. You'll do impress and ward rounds depending on the facility that you're in. Following that, you usually post to either your 1st Close Health Battalion or your 2nd General Health Battalion. There's been a big restructure that's happened within military, and I won't bore you with it, but basically there are different levels of support within the Army. You think about it as level 1 is the medic who's walking around with that group of soldiers, who's there to provide immediate first aid in the event of casualties. Then there's your level 2, so you're pulling back away from that on the ground to stabilise a patient. So you're looking at your resus and evacuation and staging capabilities. Then you move back again and you're looking at stage 3 facilities, which incorporate things like PAP,